Mary Slaughter was born in 1900 to a Universalist family. Her grandfather had founded the Liberty Universalist Church in Camp Hill, Alabama, where Mary was raised. But she was not some small-town girl. By 23, Mary was a field worker for the Universalist Sunday School Association. Can you imagine it? A single woman in the 1920s traveling the country, assisting in the development of Universalist Sunday school programs across the United States. Mary was so well known for her work throughout the denomination that when she married a Universalist minister named Clinton, he was known as Mary Slaughter's husband. Which is a big deal for the gender dynamics of the 1930s. As a man and an ordained preacher, Clinton gets more credit in the history books. But in reality, Clinton and Mary worked very closely together. These two were a power couple. They were innovative in worship, religious education, and works for justice. Together, they made history. They served congregations in Massachusetts, Ohio, Illinois, Florida, and they had a son together named Peter. And of course, they faced their fair share of challenges. For example, while serving a congregation in Illinois, Clinton and Mary were outspoken supporters of democracy and peace, and opposed corruption and violence, and the mafia did not appreciate Clinton's sermons and Mary's newspaper articles and other publications. Al Capone himself threatened to kidnap little Peter if they did not stop. So Clinton and Mary sent Peter into hiding, and they knew the perfect place: Mary's family farm way down in Alabama. Like Mary Slaughter, I spent a significant portion of my 20s traveling across the country, although not for any particular noble cause, and I didn't get paid for it. I didn't know how far I would go when I first set out on my very first road trip from Massachusetts to Oregon. It was January, and to avoid the snowy mountain passes, I decided to go down the East Coast, across the South, and up the West Coast. In preparation for my journey, I visited my grandfather, Peter, to ask him about the family farm where he had spent his childhood. Where was the church that our ancestors built? Where was the family gravesite where Mary and the rest of the Slaughter family was buried? Peter had no specific directions for my journey, just the name of the town with our church at the center. The graveyard was not by the church, but near the family farm, or where it had been, except at some point during this conversation, my grandfather, instead of using the word farm, said the word plantation, and suddenly all of the pieces slammed together in my brain. White people, Alabama, they owned land and had enough money to build a church. Of course, they had held slaves. I felt foolish for having never put those pieces together before. If I had been born black, at what age would it have occurred to me to wonder if I was the descendant of enslaved people? I suspect it would have been as a young child, but as a white person, I'd have the privilege of not confronting my personal relationship with the American slavery system until adulthood. It was something I'd read about in history books, not personal. But it turns out justice is always personal. I was uncomfortable, I felt foolish, and I felt angry. With all of the stories I had heard about my heritage, how had this massive fact that we were the descendants of slaveholders never have been mentioned? Never discussed. This omission was a form of dishonesty, and I felt betrayed by my immediate family. I also felt betrayed by my ancestors. How could they have enslaved people while also preaching universalism? I had been taught that Universalists believed in freedom, equality, and that every human being is worthy of love and dignity regardless of outward appearances. For what it's worth, Mary had rejected her family's racism, and this led to some very uncomfortable conversations with her family of origin when, in desperation, she brought Peter to Alabama for his safety. My road trip became a sort of pilgrimage. I found the little town in Alabama with our church at its center, and I was disappointed not to find any living relatives on this trip, but a helpful local in a pickup truck escorted my powder blue Prius down a bumpy red dirt road to the graveside of my ancestors. I spent quite a long time in the family graveyard that afternoon, thinking, crying, pacing. I thought about the similarities and differences in our values, trying to see the choices of my ancestors within their historical context does not excuse or condone their behavior, but it does help me to understand how supposedly good people could do such evil things. It also helps keep me from feeling superior. I wonder what choices I or you are making today that 150 years ago they will think are appalling. Maybe driving a car or buying a plane ticket. As I walked among the gravestones of my ancestors, I prayed for God to forgive them. I prayed for God to help me forgive them. And I wondered what I could do, what I could possibly do with my lifetime that might address the harm that had been done during theirs. I can't undo the past. There's no way to fix it. But that doesn't free me from the burden of responsibility or accountability. Reparations is a controversial topic, and people sometimes get scared and heated about it. And like the problem in our storybook this morning, what if it takes away all of my things? What if it swallows me up? How can we heal the injustices of our heritage and do right by the generations yet to come? What do we do with a problem like systemic racism or white supremacy? These things can feel overwhelming. Luckily, I am not in charge of fixing everything. I'm not in charge of the country, and neither are you. What we can do is small acts in our personal lives. We can make justice bite-sized because we are all just people. Every transgression is done by a person, and every act of healing is also done by a person. The quote on our sign outside this week has the words from James Baldwin, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." The first thing we have to do is tell the truth. And if we don't know the truth, we seek it out and then tell it and keep on telling it. Maybe there are parts of your heritage that you don't know. I recognize that many people do not have access to their heritage more than 3 generations back. The stories of our families are interrupted by war, enslavement, genocide, natural disasters, and more. Maybe you could find out your family history and you're afraid to find it. Believe me, I get it. When I first learned that I'm the descendant of enslavers, I felt guilty by association, like my blood was contaminated by their crimes. And I was afraid that people would hate me if they found out this family secret. I was afraid that if I talked about it, I would be rejected. But that's not what happened. In 2019, I shared this scary secret, this big, scary problem with my friend and colleague, the Reverend Vertus Robinson, who is a Black man and also a historian of African American history. Vertus then asked me to do a joint service with him about our ancestral ties to slavery. I was scared to share my family history from the pulpit. I was afraid I would somehow tarnish the family name by talking about it. But my ancestors are the ones who brought shame upon the family with their actions. Talking about it is how we begin to heal. As the social scientist Brené Brown tells us, shame thrives in secrecy. The more we hide from the parts of our past that we're ashamed of, the more power those shameful things have over us, and the more likely we are to perpetuate harm instead of doing right by each other today. These scary secrets can come in lots of forms. A history of enslaving other peoples is not the only crime an ancestor can have. And maybe the scary family secrets are still ongoing. Maybe there is something in your family that is happening right now or happened just one generation ago that you feel ashamed to let anyone know about. Just like our story, if we turn towards the things that scare us, we might find something beautiful inside. If we turn towards the big, scary problem and engage with it, tackle it, we are likely to find an opportunity. And I don't mean that the problem itself is beautiful or a gift. I mean that the act of engaging with it is what creates the beautiful opportunity to learn, to grow, to be brave, and to do something good. Like alchemy, turning lead into gold. It is a process. Vertus and I have now told our stories together and separately many times. The gravity of the harm is still the same, but I am no longer afraid to talk about it. The shame is gone. And now I am better able to engage in anti-racism and abolition work today, but in my ministry and in my personal life. I'm better able to do my part, my little human part, to heal the world and make amends. Systemic racism, white supremacy, these are very big problems, but they're also sort of categories because they are made up of these smaller acts as well as the systems that we all engage in. So each individual person making choices all add up. And when I think about justice in this way, it helps me to feel like what I do matters. The injustices of our world are abundant, and they touch our lives every day, which means that each of us has abundant opportunity to make things better. I encourage you to be brave, to go towards the uncomfortable problems that you've been avoiding with curiosity and courage, and bring a friend. That can be a scary place to go by yourself. You do not have to do it alone. That's why we are in a caring, loving community like this one, and there are professionals that can help as well. Highly recommend it. I'm going to leave you with words from our story this morning. Now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it.